Let's talk about a company's financial pulse. Not the profits they report, but the actual cash they have to run the business. Today, we're diving deep into the receivables turnover ratio. Think about it. You've just landed a massive sale. The contract signed, the invoice is out the door. Your books? They look great. They're showing a big profit. But here's the real question. Can you use that profit to pay your employees, to cover rent? Nope, not until that cash is actually in the bank. And that gap, the time between earning the revenue and actually receiving the cash, that can be the difference between a company that thrives and one that fails. This is where a business's real-world liquidity lives or dies. So, how do we actually measure this critical gap? Well, analysts have a specific tool for this, and it's called the Receivables Turnover Ratio. It's a really powerful metric that tells us just how good a company is at turning its accounts receivable, which are basically just customer IOUs, into cold, hard cash. Okay, so let's pop the hood and look at the formula itself. It might look a little intimidating, but it's actually way simpler than you'd think, and it tells us a ton about the speed of a business. So here it is, net credit sales divided by average accounts receivable. You're pulling the first number from the income statement, which tracks performance over time, and the second number from the balance sheet, which is more of a snapshot. By combining them, we get this incredible view into how efficient the company's operations really are. Now, pay close attention here because this is where people make a huge mistake. The number on top, the numerator, has to be net credit sales. Why? Because if you use total sales, you're including all those cash transactions that required zero collection effort. That's like getting credit for a job you didn't even do. It completely inflates the ratio and makes the company look way more efficient than it is. It's a classic analytical trap. And for the bottom number, the denominator, we use an average. You might be wondering, why an average? Well, a company's receivables can swing wildly during the year, especially if it's a seasonal business. So by taking the balance at the beginning of the year, adding the balance at the end, and just dividing by 2, we smooth out those big swings. It gives us a much more stable and accurate picture of what's going on. All right, so we've run the calculation, and now we have a number. But a number by itself is pretty useless, right? So what is it actually telling us? Let's get into what a high or low turnover really means. A high ratio is usually great news. It's a signal of efficient collections, a solid customer base that pays on time, and really strong cash flow. A low ratio, though, that's a red flag. It might mean your credit policies are too loose, your collections process is broken, and all your precious cash is stuck in other people's bank accounts instead of working for you. You know, saying your company turns over its receivables 10 times a year sounds good to an analyst, but for a manager on the ground, what does that really mean? It's a little abstract. We can actually translate this into something way more useful. Because this is the question everyone really wants the answer to. From the moment we make a sale, how long does it take to get the money? And for that, we turn to our ratio's best friend, a metric called Days Sales Outstanding, or DSO. It takes that abstract frequency number and turns it into a simple, tangible number of days. They're basically two sides of the same coin. A high turnover ratio means a low number of days, and a low ratio means a high number of days. And the math to get there? It's incredibly simple. You just take 365, the number of days in a year, and divide it by that turnover ratio we just calculated. And boom, here's a perfect example. If your turnover ratio is 10, that means on average, it takes you 36.5 days to turn a credit sale into cash in the bank. Now that is a number you can actually manage and act on. But here's the thing, this ratio isn't just about doing math. It actually forces a really fundamental strategic decision that every single business leader has to confront. And that choice is this. You prioritize getting cash in the door as fast as possible. If so, you'll use strict credit terms, you'll get a high turnover ratio, but you might lose some sales to competitors. Or do you prioritize aggressive growth? That means offering lenient terms to attract more customers. Your sales will go up, but your ratio will go down and your cash will be tied up. As you can see, it's a constant balancing act and there's no single right answer. Now, this brings us to one of the most important rules in all of financial analysis. A number, by itself, is almost meaningless. You absolutely need context. Let me ask you this. Let's say your company's ratio is 7. Is that good? Is it bad? The only right answer is, it depends. It depends on your industry. Just look at this chart. A typical retailer might turn over their receivables 9 times a year. For a construction company, it might be closer to 8. And for a healthcare provider dealing with complex insurance claims, it could be down around 6. So that ratio of 7 would actually be pretty inefficient for the retailer, but it could be fantastic for the healthcare company. You have to compare yourself to your peers. So let's just quickly recap the big analytical traps to avoid. Number 1, don't use total sales. Always use net credit sales. Watch out for seasonal businesses that can warp the average. And for sure, never ever compare companies in totally different industries. It just doesn't work. Okay, for our last point, let's zoom out. Because a declining ratio is more than just a number on a page. It's a signal. It's a diagnostic tool that can tell you something much deeper is going on. When you see that ratio getting worse, the first instinct for a lot of people is to blame the collections team. But believe me, the root of the problem often lies somewhere else entirely. And this, right here, is the key insight. A low ratio isn't just a finance problem. Think about it. Why do customers really pay late? A lot of the time, it's because an order was wrong, a product was defective, or a delivery showed up late. The slow payment is just a symptom of a breakdown in your supply chain, your quality control, or your customer service. So I'll leave you with this final thought. The receivables turnover ratio isn't just measuring how fast you collect money. At its core, it's actually measuring the health and the quality of your entire customer experience. It's a reflection of your customer relationships, just written in the language of finance.